Since we've got the chord progression down now, we can move on to the drums to kind of complete the overall fundamental lo-fi vibe, which is the harmonic environment, the chord progression, and the kind of rhythmic world, which is the drums. Of course, drums are a big part of lo-fi. They have a specific feel in a lot of lo-fi tracks, and we're going to go for that today. So you can open up Impact, and we're going to build a custom kit. And we're going to build this kit by coming into Browse, going to Loops, and we're going to search the Studio One loops that come with the professional version. If you don't have professional, these samples we're going to use are not available to you. So make sure you've got that, but of course a bunch of instruments are not available to you if you don't have the professional version. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to push search, because it's not actually just for loops. We're just going to make sure we search one shot, which is going to give us not a loop, but a single sample. And then you're going to search whatever type of thing you want, such as kick, or snare, or hat, or crash, or whatever. And then you'll get a whole bunch down here from the built-in samples that come with Studio One that you can use. You can just drag them in here and set up your kit. So I'm going to set up my kit now, and then I'm going to show you my finished kit, all the samples I've chosen. So if you want to choose the same samples, you can, and then also any settings that I've changed within the parameters here. So I'll do that now. So on the left side of the screen, you can see the list of samples that I've used and what key they are assigned to. Of course, you can see the keys listed at the top left of every pad, the keyboard keys. And so I play all my drums on a keyboard, and I'm going to use the MIDI piano roll to create them. So it's good to know what keys they're assigned to. So you can go through and pick all those samples if you like. I'll leave that up here. And I'm also going to go through and just show you a couple of the things I've done to edit them, just to make it work a bit better for me. First is with this kick here. The kick, I have changed the amp envelope on just to make it a bit tighter. So I've brought the hold up to 32 milliseconds and the decay down to 848 milliseconds, so it's not quite as boomy and long and gets a bit tighter. I believe everything else there is remaining the same. On this one, this is my secondary kick. I've brought the gain down minus 8.6 decibels. I've actually done the same thing here. This is down at 897. The decay, the hold is at 28.5, and the attack is actually brought up 4.3 milliseconds. That's because the attack of this kick is too sharp for me for this kind of song, too punchy and clicky. And so I've actually faded in the attack of the sound a little bit to make it softer, to match the softness of this one. Lastly, I've put them together in a choke group. As you can see, you highlight both here and you come up to choke and you set it to 1 or 2 or anything. That just means that when this sample plays, it turns off this sample and vice versa. So if you wanted to do a da-dum, where you play one sample then the other, the second one will turn off the first one so they don't overlap, just like a real kick would not be able to overlap with itself. Now here on my snare, I've just brought the gain down by some amount that it's not telling me, minus 7.2, and I brought the decay down to 1.45 seconds, make it a little bit tighter and a little bit quieter so it blends in with the rest of the kit. And we've got these little poppy glitchy sounds, panned left and right. The first one on the key E is down in gain, some amount that hopefully will tell me, minus 15.3, and it's panned pretty far left at 40. The rest of it remains the same. The other one is down 10.8 dB and is panned 40 to the right. And so they can kind of do a side-to-side thing. It only happens once in the beat, but it's kind of a nice texture. This F sharp key remains unchanged. This G key we're not using. This G sharp key we're not using. And then here's the 2 hi-hats. So the first one here, number 2, it says here, little 2 at the end just to differentiate. My A key is up in gain, just 2.1 dB. And I'm also high passing them. So both of these are getting high passed the same. Let's just look at this one. This one has nothing going on down here. The gain is set normal. Everything is set normal. But I selected both. And then I turned on the filter and I set it to HP12 ladder. This is a high pass, meaning it's going to get rid of low frequencies and keep high frequencies. And so then I've brought that cutoff down to 1.85 kilohertz. So with it off, we hear, and with it on, tighter and smaller. That's what I was going for, something kind of clean and unobtrusive. So both of those have the same filter applied to them. Actually, that got turned off, but yeah, both of them do the same filter. They're supposed to be the same hi-hat. That's the idea, right? Is that one is a hard hit and one is a softer hit, and they're going to alternate and give the illusion of being a single physical drum, physical cymbal. So that's it for the drum setup. Let's get into the beat. So I'm going to start off by doing a rough recording of the kick and snare pattern together physically. I'm going to do it on my keyboard physically. So I played it all right, but we'll see. We can come in here and change things. Now this is the view that's going to show up for me as soon as I click on that, but I'm going to move over to the piano roll view because this is the way I like to work myself. I'm going to select everything and set everything to be a specific length just so it's easy to see. So I'm going to hold Control, and then I'm just going to set it to like a 16th like that. So they're all short. It doesn't actually matter what length they are. It's just a visual thing. So for me, I'm going to start off in this beat. There's so many ways to do this, but I'm going to quantize my snares. I want my snares to land perfectly on that division every time. And I'm going to quantize the kicks that land on the 1 of a bar, on the downbeat of the bar. The other ones can be looser, and I can come through and either move them by hand until I like the sound of it, or I can just play them and try to get the vibe by playing. It depends on where your skill is with that and how comfortable you feel doing it. It's kind of fun to try to play it at first. So I've done that already, but we can see I'm early on these hits. There's only a couple of hits. I'm very early on this hit. Everything's early. Everything's early. I can't stand things being early. I'm probably going to try to play it again now, and then I'm going to come in and see if anything needs any edits, and I'll be back with you. All right, so I'm happy with what I got. I'm just going to make sure that my velocities are set the way I want them. I'm going to grab all of the snares, and I'm going to set them to a specific velocity. So I'm going to grab the velocity meter here and then hold Control, which will snap them all to the same. I'm going to pull that down to 80% as just a way of standardizing it. I'm going to do the same with my kicks, but not my secondary kicks, just my primary kick. And I'm going to hold Control and click on the C key, which is the key the kicks are assigned to, and it will select all of those so that my primary kicks always hit with the same emphasis. That's not required, it's just something I'm choosing to do right now. And I'm going to come down to here, grab this and hold Control. And that will, again, will set them to the same velocity while holding, drag it down till I see 80%, and then I know it's all set. For these secondary kicks, I'm just going to make sure that they are softer than the primary kick, kind of like that. And they don't have to be precise, I'm just eyeballing. You can get more realism, of course, if you're into that kind of thing by not doing this, not standardizing, but having some fluctuations. That's totally fine too. I'm often doing that in songs, but in this case, I decided to go for this route. For the hi-hats, remember we have 2 samples. We've got this one and the smaller one, and we're going to alternate them in a kind of what I call slugging pattern. I get that term from the gospel world, slugging. Other people call it drunken drumming or the lo-fi sound or whatever, which is where the hi-hat that falls on the 8th note in between is not perfectly on beat, but is slightly late from where it should be, and it creates this kind of like lurching feeling, which is so prevalent in lo-fi and in so many modern genres. I'm going to try to play it by hand because the sloppiness factor is actually going to add to the vibe of the song. You can give that a try too, alternating the 2 hi-hats back and forth, one's hard, one's softer, and trying to approximate the sluggy feeling, which you can hear me do here in a second. And then if needed, we'll go in and we'll edit it just like before. So let's give that a shot. What I'm going to do now, just like before with the piano, is I'm going to go through, I'm going to let it play, and any hit that sticks out to my ear is feeling like, that timing is wrong. I'm going to go in and just slightly adjust it manually, not quantizing, to get it to the point where I like it. And I'm going to leave everything else just the same. I'm just going to let my ear guide me and try to get the feel just from listening as opposed to being analytical about it. I'm also going to set all these to be the same length again, because again, it doesn't actually matter and it's easier to visualize if they are. And yeah, so I'm going to do that now and then I'll be back with you. It's feeling good now. I'm going to set the velocities just by highlighting all of the heavy hi-hats. And what I'm going to do here is quantize the velocity to maybe say whatever, call it 75. And then I'm going to do the same for the lower one. And I'm going to put it at maybe like 60. And then I'm going to use the humanize function to get a little bit of variation in that, because when I was playing, sometimes I'm too heavy-handed, sometimes not. So instead of going through and like adjusting everyone manually, a different technique, which you can also use, is by highlighting everything, push Control H for humanize, and then you can choose in here what you want to work on. So in this case, I don't want to affect the note start at all, because I've already got those perfectly as I want them. That is their rhythmic placement. But I want to adjust the velocities a little bit, maybe like say 8%, or even say 5% in either direction. And And we just get very subtle variation between them now. You could also leave them just as you play them. It's totally up to you what kind of sound you're looking for. The last thing we're going to do with the drum pattern is just add in a couple tiny little textural things, little accents maybe, syncopated accents, just to make it sound good. How about that? So we're going to add in this guy. I'm just going to draw him in here. This is my F sharp key, and we'll just pull him down maybe, I don't know what, like 40-something%. And we get this sort of sound. So we get like a mirror or imitation. Ka-ka-du-dum. And then at the end, we're going to add in the little glitchy 2 bits, this guy and this guy. And I'm going to manually offset them so this one's a bit closer to that hi-hat, and this one's just whatever. It could be anything, not that important. Just that little side to side. That's all. That's our drum fill, so to speak. It's not even really going to be that perceivable, but it just creates a bit more motion right when the loop comes to the end and sets us up to begin again. With the drum pattern complete, we just have a couple things to do left on the drums. The first is we can put a EQ over the drum bus. Now in my template here, I've got all of my drum channels heading to this drum bus here, and I'm going to put an EQ directly on this drum bus. So I can just even grab one of these and stick it here, and I can enable that. And then I'm just going to paste the setting I had before and show you what that was, which is just a low cut at 24 decibels an octave at 40 hertz. That's this guy being pulled up to remove some low end. So we're removing some low end from the kick, not too much, but a little bit, just to leave room for the subby bass that's going to go down there. And we're also going to pull quite a bit at 24 decibels off the top, which is down to 2K. So we're pulling this guy down from the top all the way to 2K, and that gives us this sound. Already sounding more lo-fi. And then we're going to reveal the hidden channels here. I had them hidden because I wasn't needing to use them, but now we are. So I'm going to just show the tracks list here, and I'm going to say I'm going to look at my kick, my snare, and my hats. And then I want to make sure inside of impact that they're going to the right place. So my 2 kicks are being sent to output 2 in my case. That's where I have the kick set. If you don't know how to do this, you just come up here, grab this button, and you can create as many outputs as you want. So I've created outputs for all of these. I'm not going to use all of them today. That's just in my template. And I'm going to use the kick, the snare, and the hats. And we're going to send the 2 kicks out to output 2 here, which means they're going to end up in this channel. The snare is in output 3. The hats are in output 4. And the rest, I'm just leaving in output 1. I'm going to call this kind of my do-it-all channel, my percussion channel, my whatever. And so I've got kick, snare, hats, and the rest comes out here. What this allows us to do is have finer control over the relative volume and mixing and everything of these channels, of course, right? So they're not all grouped into one channel. They're spread out so that they can be dealt with independently, which we're going to use in just a minute to put some reverb on the snare, and we're going to use later to control the side chaining from the kick to make all the other elements duck in volume. Taking a look at the snare track, I'm going to use the send and send it out now to reverb 2. Verb 2, I'm going to come over to verb 2, which is right here. If you haven't created this, of course, if you're not using the template, you'll have to create that now. And then we're going to use the room reverb on here as well. So let's enable that. And this time, we are going to create our own patch for this. And I'm going to bring the volume of this send down a little bit already, just to keep it in check. And we're just going to start tweaking this while the thing is playing to get the kind of sound we're after. So before we start working on this, I want to solo the drums, but in my template, I have the reverb set up to be sent to my instrument bus. So when I solo the drums, it's not going to go through the drum bus, it's going to go through the instrument bus, which is going to be muted because I'm soloing the drums. So I just want to change this to be sending to the drum bus, and I'll just call this drum verb instead, or snare verb even better, snare verb 1, and then we're good to go on that. Now I can solo this and we can hear what this raw preset sounds like. Actually already sounds pretty good. So let's get tweaking. So I'm going to just push play. I'm going to tweak a few parameters just to get it a bit more in line with how I want it. First thing is I don't want a large hall. I'm going to go for a medium hall just to change a bit of the internal room dynamics there about the relationship of early reflections to late reflections. And I'm gonna bring this length down just a little bit so that the reverb basically is ending by the time the next snare hits. It's pretty close already. That's pretty much perfect. In the mix, we might want to bring that up a little bit because it's going to get buried, so let's go to 2.7. That's perfect. Now coming down here, you'll hear when I turn this reflexivity knob, the sound becomes more broken apart. Fluttering. I can bring this volume up for now so you can hear. Turning it back down. Smoother. I want smooth. Using the population knob, if I bring it all the way down, we're going to get more low end, meaning there's less stuff in the room to absorb the reflections, meaning there's more low end present. All the way up, thinner, and that's what I want in this case. The dampness is how fast the high reflections go away versus. So where we had it was already pretty good. I'm also going to swap it over to the high quality mode, which sometimes ends up making the thing have a longer tail, interestingly. Let's take a listen. Yeah, it's a bit bigger sounding. I might bring this down just a little bit. That's better. The last thing I'm going to do is work on the pre-delay, which is how long does it take after the sound hits for the reverb to build up, which can give an interesting effect, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in this case. Like if I make this massive, you'll see what I mean. Right? It's like the walls of the space that you're in are so far away that the snare hits in front of you and you have to wait until the reflections come back before you hear the reverb. That's kind of what we're talking about. So I don't want this much. I just kind of want maybe like somewhere around here. It just separates the snare from the reverb a little bit to keep it front and center. A lot of lo-fi stuff doesn't even have reverb on the snare at all, and I'm going to make this quite subtle in this mix, but I like to have it because it fills out the space a little bit and makes it more expansive, more of an atmosphere. So I like this whole setup that we've got now. I'm just going to bring this way down. I don't know the number yet because we need the whole mix to judge that, but I'm going to bring it down to about -22, -20, somewhere around there. And that's all. That's almost perfect, actually. I don't want anyone to be thinking that there's a reverb on the snare. I just want it to be there and be filling out the space. That's the idea. Now, since we put a low-pass filter across the whole drum bus, meaning we removed all the high frequencies, and the hi-hats are high frequencies, we need to boost them in volume so they push through the mix a little bit more. I'm going to go about 4 dB up on these guys. I'm also going to bring the kick down a bit. It's hitting a bit hard at the moment. Let's bring it down maybe -4-ish, and let's take a listen. So I'm panning the hi-hat over a little bit just to give it some stereo separation so we can hear it better. And I like that. I like where we're at with this at the moment.